Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 10 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast. This week's interview is with conservative street artist Sabo, the man behind those gangsta Ted Cruz posters that rocked LA a few years ago. But before we get to Sabo, I wanted to talk a little bit about Hollywood bullies. We all remember by now Meryl Streep's Golden Globes speech. Of course, it was a full-on attack on Trump, but it also talked about bullying and how wrong that is. And frankly, I think that resonated with a whole bunch of people. Now, there are arguments back and forth whether Donald Trump really poked fun at that handicapped reporter. I've seen good arguments on both sides, but the message that Streep was trying to send was clear. No bullying, certainly not by the president, but just overall, bullying is bad. And who could argue with that? The irony, of course, is that Hollywood is chock full of bullies, and we've seen a lot of bullying in the last few weeks. Just look at Joss Whedon, one of the best directors we have. Mr. A-list himself, the guy who gave us the Avengers movie, which I absolutely love and can't stop loving. Well, he bullied Nicole Kidman on Twitter for daring to say, hey, maybe we should support our president shortly after Trump's election and the inauguration. Didn't seem like an outrageous statement, hardly political, pretty bland, in fact. But Whedon sent out a tweet afterwards with a picture of her, basically comparing her to one of the characters from that old Thunderbirds TV show, if I have the name of it right, the sort of the puppets, the marionettes, sort of out in space or something akin to that. Anyway, it was clearly dispiriting and clearly making fun of not just Kidman and her thoughts, but also her looks. And if you've seen Nicole Kidman recently, it's possible she's had some plastic surgery done. So I think from a major director who calls himself a feminist, picking fun at Nicole Kidman for her face and her opinions kind of sounds like bullying to me, but it's hardly the first time that people were bullied in the last few weeks. We've seen some other instances as well. One of the manager from the Dixie Chicks basically saying that artists who play at the inauguration for Trump, well, they shouldn't get work anymore. And that's kind of frightening. But something similar happened with Jennifer Holliday, the Broadway singer. She faced death threats for just considering playing at the Trump inauguration. I believe she pulled out. I don't blame her. That's a disaster. But you know what? Just par for the course lately. We've also seen rappers like Snoop Dogg and T.I. basically attack black celebrities for daring to meet with Donald Trump. And you can put Steve Harvey and Kanye West in that category. It seems like meeting with people and talking with people is a good thing, even if you disagree with them, even violently, for crying out loud. Getting together, breaking bread, having a conversation, seeing where there's common ground is kind of where the nation should be going. But those particular rappers basically ragged on those stars for doing what they did. And I think that's pretty terrible. But, of course, there are more and more examples of things like this. And I think there's going to be a lot of goings-on behind the scenes where actors, singers, celebrities, talent, they don't get jobs because they're either supporting Trump or they're not visceral enough in their hatred for Trump or somewhere in between. But it all begs the question, where's the outrage? Where's George Clooney? Never mind Meryl Streep. He's Mr. Hollywood. He's the guy who speaks out against injustices. He talks about overseas and all the things that are going on around the world in Africa and trying to speak truth to power and meeting with President Obama a few years ago. Why is he not outraged by these kind of events, the bullying that's going on? Why can't a celebrity have a different point of view and not get punished for it? Hollywood loves talking about the blacklist of the 1950s. And yes, it was a terrible time. And yes, I don't think communists should have gotten stripped of their livelihood for having views that I think are just flat out wrong. But unless they're actively engaged in taking down the government, they're just hardcore progressives who are espousing a certain cause. They shouldn't be punished for that. And of course, Hollywood every few years brings it up in bold colors. We saw Trumbo from last year, the movie with Bryan Cranston. He got an Academy Award nomination for his role. We saw a documentary on Dalton Trumbo, the screenwriter who was targeted during the blacklist era. So we've seen lots of examples and lots of hand-wringing over that particular time in Hollywood history. And yet here we are in 2017, and something similar is going on. And there's singular lack of outrage from the press, from the Hollywood press in particular, but also from celebrities in general. So my message to George Clooney is start paying attention, start speaking out, because something nasty is going on and you need to speak out, as are your colleagues. I think we'd be all better off if you raise your voices and stop it now before it gets even worse. Now, I want to switch gears a bit and go to my HiT tip of the week. It's Sneaky Pete. It's Amazon Prime's latest TV series. It stars Giovanni Ribisi. He plays a man fresh out of prison who could get in big trouble if some bad guys find him. And of course, the bad guys here are represented by Bryan Cranston, who's also a producer on the TV series. So what does Ribisi's character do? He takes on a new identity, someone who can kind of let him sneak away. He stashes out in a farm setting with a family that thinks he's someone who he clearly isn't, and he basically integrates himself into the family, into their culture, all the while trying to stay one step ahead Bryan Cranston's bad guy. Now, I've only seen a few episodes of this show, but so far, so very good. Smart, clever, engaging, and I'm not surprised by the high level of quality here. This is from showrunner Graham Yost, who also delivered Justified, one of the best shows of the last 10 years. So you've got a good track record behind the scenes. You've also got some Justified stars showing up from time to time. I'm kind of expecting more of those actors to be popping up. I wish we'd see Nick Searcy, but we'll have to remain to be seen if he'll appear. But it's a very good show so far. I've heard nothing but raves from the critical press, and also just anecdotally reaching out to people on Facebook and social media. They love it too, so check it out. It's called Sneaky Pete. Season 1 is now available on Amazon Prime. It's good stuff and well worth your time. Now let's get to this week's interview. Sabo is the most talked about conservative street artist in America. Then again, if you thought conservative movie critics like me were rare, artists like Sabo are like winged unicorns in 2017. He'd be one of the best even in a crowded field, though. His images really rattle pop culture to its core. Just think about that Ted Cruz image. That one just basically ricocheted across the internet years ago. I think it's still doing that, and of course it attracted the attention of Cruz himself and his team. Sabo is the force behind unsavoryagents.com, and he recently turned those Rogue One movie posters into an unapologetic ode to Trump's improbable victory. Pretty tough stuff, especially if you're a progressive sitting on a seat bench where that poster is plastered all over it. So let's get to find out more about Sabo with this week's interview. I wanted to start really with your art background, and it may be sort of a cliched question, but are you sort of self-taught, or did you go to art school, or how did you kind of get to where you are right now from an artist point of view?
Oh, I went to the Art Center in Pasadena. The strange thing is I was on a tank in the Marine Corps, and the gunner wanted to go to Art Center. We both got out at the same time pretty much here in Southern California, and we both became graphic designers, and I went to the Art Center and he started his own ad agency. But, I studied advertising. I didn't study art. I never felt a kinship with the artists, I guess. And so I was a very technical guy. I learned programming, CSS, HTML, and such. And back in the mid-'90s and early 2000s, the startups were very big. So I played a part in that. And I was basically just running my head against the wall trying to be this tech guy and tech artist. And, I pulled my own. I did fairly well. I had jobs, worked at startups and such, but I just kind of trudged through it. And although I could do it, I didn't fly very well. I always loved politics. And I think one of my last jobs, I just said, screw it, Hillary's going to be president, or she's going to run. I think it was like 2008 or something, 2006 or something. And I started doing some pieces on that. But before that, I was already doing political art. But I really kind of cranked it into gear then. And I got my feet kind of wet, and I was like, you know what, man, this is what I want to do.
Gotcha.
And I think I had one more tech job after that, and at that point, I knew enough, and I quit. I started for a couple of years, and it just kind of picked up after that.
Do you think that maybe having that advertising background helped you in a way? I mean, I think it's an unconventional way to start an art career, but I would think that the marketing side of that maybe was a good thing.
Well, see, it's not the marketing side of advertising that saved me. It was the concept side. Because, I mean, you can have people give me, everyone has ideas, but how to execute those ideas successfully is a different story. And what you do at the Art Center is they drill you like 8 hours a day or however many hours a day on concept. And so that helped. And also at the Art Center, they also push you to execute your concepts to as far to completion as possible. So you become fairly technically savvy. And I was already on the Mac even before I got to the Art Center. So in a creative way that helped. And, once I jumped into politics, it was like a fish in water. And once I had the creative skills, I could bang anything out fairly quickly. And I do have people every now and then say, oh, you just head swap, what you do is very easy, and this and that. I'm like, well, knock yourself out. Let's see what you can do.
That's right.
Yeah, and they either quit or they can't do it or it looks like crap. And it's like, no, there's quite a bit involved in what I do. And I'll visit the art center every now and then because I like to just go back. And it kind of just weirds me out because you run across all these kids with like purple hair and everything's got to be unique and different, and I'm an artist, and I can't help but wonder how many of them are actually going to become artists. I mean, they're playing the part in school, but it's like, and I had learned early on, if I run across people from art center, just don't ask them what they do for a living, because more times than not, they're going to tell you, well, I'm an accountant.
Yeah.
Or, it's something other than art. So, I mean, it was just a complete fluke that I fell into art.
You mentioned sort of not feeling a kinship with your fellow artists. Was it just politically speaking, or was it other things that sort of didn't kind of mesh with them?
I think it's a lifestyle. I think there's something a little off. You have people who are artists, and you have people who act like artists.
Uh-huh.
They look like artists. Some of the most impressive people that I've run across are some of the most simple people. Because they know they don't have time to go have their hair done or to go shopping for punky clothes because they're too busy creating stuff. And they're just average people, average-looking people, but they love what they do. They put their time in, and as time progresses, they just become good at their craft. And I would like to think that that's me. I just put my head down, I get the work done, and I don't celebrate. I'm an artist. But every now and then you'll hear me say it.
Okay.
But I mean, those are big words when I consider some of the people that I admire. Some of the big names, and I was like, wow, can I possibly put myself in the same class? And I guess if we were talking technique and skill, the answer would be no. But if you were talking about concept and purpose and the Dadaists had a reason, the realists had a purpose, Cubists had a purpose. I have a purpose that, in my opinion, is just as solid. And so, I mean, bold, that may sound bold, but I believe that with all my heart.
Yeah. Well, as I kind of transitioned from being a journalist and a entertainment reporter to being a conservative journalist and a conservative entertainment reporter, in part because there are so few people doing what I do. And when you kind of embraced art and embraced your political side, did you get the sense that, hey, there's no one doing what I'm doing? And maybe that in and of itself is a reason to kind of keep on doing what I'm doing.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. And, I've said it in the past. It's like I found myself an individual with mediocre skills, just advancing and thriving in what I'm doing simply because no one else is doing it. And it's not cool, and I just tell people, hey, man, jump in, the water's warm. And, a lot of people would say, hey, dude, just keep your mouth shut, man. You got the pasture all to yourself. Yeah, I probably do, but that's not the whole purpose for me doing what I do. We need more people doing it.
Yeah. Walk me through a little bit about your process. Let's just say there's an event coming to L.A., maybe even the Oscars next month. Do you sort of do a brainstorming session, start thinking about what I need to do, or is every particular installation different?
It wasn't very long ago. I was able to execute what I do with 10 posters and a backpack on my bike. And, this was even in my mid to late 30s. I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and jam out there. Now it's like, things have gotten so involved. We're talking about hangars, installations, bus installations. I mean, people seem to want more and more and more. So I guess logistically, it's gotten pretty involved. Mm-hmm. But conceptually, let's say, for example, in a show like